Pose 01. Okay. Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We have an exciting day ahead, and I hope you will leave feeling inspired, having learned something new and full of enthusiasm to pursue a PhD career. Feel free to ask questions, engage with our amazing speakers, and take full advantage of this opportunity. My name is Adiara Kamjan. I'm a PhD candidate in neural engineering at the University of Pittsburgh, and I'm proud to represent the Kazakh Association of PhDs in North America, or KAPNA in short. Alongside my incredible colleagues and co-founders, Anyar Izgutinov, Dr. Murat Yesenov, and Dr. Zhenizbek Takay, Dr. Galia Magazova, and Dinara Ibraeva. We created KAPNA to unite like-minded individuals who share common interests and challenges. Our goal is to provide a platform for connection, professional growth, and peer support. Our community is growing. It currently has over 145 members spread across the continent. We're all PhD students and graduates pursuing studies or careers in the US and Canada. And you can learn more about our work and events on our website, kapna.org. One of the KAPNA's core values is giving back to the community and promoting education, science, and technology. And with this in mind, we applied for and were awarded the Muskie Fellowship Grant for a community impact project, which enabled us to organize today's conference. We hope to inspire those of you interested in science, research, and possibly pursuing a PhD or exploring future career paths. So we have 4 exciting sessions lined up today, each focusing on important topics. We encourage you to attend all of them, and you should have received Zoom links for each session via email, and they will be shared in the chat here as well. Now, I'm thrilled to officially open the conference and kick off our first panel session, which will explore the key question: why pursue a PhD, and what career paths are available to PhD graduates? And to help answer these questions, we have 2 fantastic speakers with us today. Unfortunately, Dr. Aizat Nurshutaeva couldn't join us today, but let me first introduce Dr. Dana Akilbekova. Dr. Akilbekova is an assistant professor at the School of Engineering and Digital Sciences at Nazarbayev University. Dr. Akilbekova received her PhD in material science and engineering from Iowa State University in 2014. She then came back to Kazakhstan to work at the National Laboratory Astana, where she focused on epigenetic reprogramming of cancer cells and applications of Brilliant spectroscopy and microscopy in studying biomaterials. And on a personal note, I was lucky to overlap with her there. In 2018, Dana moved to ETH University of Zurich in Zurich, Switzerland, to start her postdoc. And in 2019, Dana got a faculty position at the Department of Chemical Engineering at NU, where she started her own tissue engineering lab. And the work of Professor Akilbekova and her team focuses on developing new regenerative materials, specifically for growing bone tissue. Dana is a living proof that doing STEM research in Kazakhstan is possible. I'm sure it's very challenging, but she still proves it's achievable. She is also a wonderful example of modern scientist who successfully balances being both a group leader and a mom to her children. So thank you so much, Dana, for being with us today.
Thank
you. Say it again.
Your slides might not be moving, so at least on my screen, I still see the schedule.
Oh, sorry. Here it is. Okay. Our second speaker is Dr. Eldar Akhmetgaliyev. Dr. Akhmetgaliyev is a serial entrepreneur, technical leader, and a founder of multiple startup companies. Eldar earned his PhD in applied mathematics from Caltech in 2015, and during his academic journey, Eldar co-founded Mockup Analytics and held key positions as a senior data scientist at Sportradar US and chief science officer at Bowler TV. Later, Eldar co-founded Nara AI, a company focused on building AI productivity tools. Currently, Eldar is working on building a new company and also serves as a board member for the Shahmardan Yesenov Science and Education Foundation. And this is the second time Eldar joins KAPNA. So he was always responsive. And thank you for that, Eldar. And also for joining us at 6 a.m.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to be here.
Okay, so before diving into why you should pursue a PhD, let's first clear up what a PhD actually is. And there are so many myths floating around. And once I saw a post on social media that went something like, if you're not ready for adult life, apply for master's degree. If you're still not ready, go for PhD. And honestly, that's the worst advice ever. The idea that a PhD is an escape from adulting couldn't be further from the truth. If anything, PhD is like being thrown into the deep end of adulthood and learning to swim. And it's not about dodging responsibilities, it's about taking on huge ones, spending 5 or more years trying to answer a question that no one else in the world has figured out. And meanwhile, your friends might be getting promotions, earning real salaries, doing real jobs, starting families, and just being what we call Jurton Balalar. So, with all that said, Dana and Eldar, what motivated you to pursue a PhD? Could you please share your professional journeys and unique reasons for choosing a PhD? Dan, I think we can start from you.
Yeah, I'm a classic Nepo baby. My parents are physicists, my grandparents are physicists. They're all professors, scientists. I lived in the small place next to Almaty. There was a Institute of Nuclear Physics. So I was like surrounded by scientists. I didn't even know that there is another possibility to become non-scientist. So it's like I knew that I wanted to become a scientist. I knew that I need a PhD degree for that. And when I was in undergrad, I really wanted to become a professor for no reason. I don't even remember the moment. Then I was like, oh, I want to become a professor. I just wanted to become one. And then because one of the things probably because I really loved university. I think I felt it as my second home. And I never wanted to leave university. So I was trying to avoid any other places rather than university. So that's why I decided to go to PhD and become a professor. So it was my decision from when I was 20. So I already knew that I want to become a professor at that age.
Okay, great. Yeah, growing in an academic family and being surrounded with academic environment could be one of the reasons. Yeah, what about you, Eldar?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think so. I definitely wasn't surrounded by academics early on, but I always liked mathematics. So I always loved math was my favorite subject. I went to some Olympiads and eventually I wanted to study math. At the time, Moscow seemed like a really good place to go for that, and went to study in Moscow. And over there, the basically the best people that I knew became like even better. So like before, I knew some people from the Olympiads and like really smart guys and girls doing math. Now, you get exposed to like the entire former Soviet flow of very smart people. So you try to be try to match that and work hard. And then I think towards the end of so in Moscow you have to do kind of both masters, and so undergrad and masters. That's the only kind of pathway. I think towards the end of that, I tried to do like hardcore research, but actually was super discouraged by that. So it was like a research institute in the center of Moscow. It was full with like really, really old professors. No one made any money, and it was like a little bit depressing for me. So I knew that's not kind of the environment I wanted to be in, but I still believe that um, like science is something that I'm really passionate about. So but I also started working towards the end of during masters, I basically kind of almost worked full time. And essentially, um, I think I wanted to, at some point I was like, okay, I cannot just give up on the dream of doing science. So it was always like a dream and a passion. And then, but the choice of PhD wasn't like, oh, I will sacrifice this like amazing career in finance or something like that. It was like, okay, so this passion, I think I need to do something abroad, like because back in Russia the opportunities weren't that great for scientists, and they neither were great back home in Kazakhstan. So yeah, I think that then a lot of people from a university pursued that path. There was like a clear guideline online on how to do this. So it seemed like, okay, I know a lot of people who went down that pathway, and that helped a lot. I know there's like clear instructions on how to do this, and I can, go step by step and finish all that. And then finally, yeah, apply to over 10, I think 10 or so universities and get in. That's how it started.
Mhm. Well, great story, and thank you for sharing, both Dana and Ildar. So now, reflecting back on your past, how do you think your PhD contributed to your current role or career? Can you help us understand what the practical applications of a PhD in different fields, whether it's in academia or industry or elsewhere?
So I can just talk about academia. I don't know industry or like where people actually make money. So, but in academia, without PhD, you are no one. You're a technician. This is your level. If you get just master degree, the maximum that you can get the technician, nice life, but still never you're gonna pass this. There is like there is a barrier without PhD. You cannot get any further without it. So if you want to do academia, if you want to stay at university, you must have a PhD degree. So it's not that you learn something important in PhD that is important for academia. It's just the way academia is built. Okay, so you need some kind of degree to further get the postdoc, get the assistant professorship, and move further. So this is a reality.
Credibility.
So it's impossible to do. Yes, I know in some Kazakh universities, you can actually become a старший преподаватель, like a lecturer. You actually can do some research independent with just a master degree, but it's only in some this kind of low-level universities. But in general, you need to have a PhD degree for academia. So otherwise, there is some. Of course, there are some good examples of people who still succeed with a master degree in academia. Okay, it's not like if you don't have PhD degree, you're stuck, you don't do anything. There is a wonderful examples. They work as the research assistants, research associates, or as a technicians, but they always work for someone's ideas. Okay, so you will never be able to work with your own idea. Okay, in academia, if you don't have a PhD degree, so you cannot even apply for, I believe, to any grant without the PhD degree as well. So for academia, it's must have. It's not like you can negotiate, it's negotiable. You have to have a PhD degree.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, it's clear about academia. What about industry?
That's the easiest part of university. You know that you need to have, that's it, no questions. Move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, what about industry, Eldar?
So I think in the industry, it's a little more questionable because the alternative. So yes, Dana is absolutely right. If you want to become a researcher, not just a professor, like any researcher, then and be able to do independent research, I think you need to go through this. But it's as you all know, it takes years of your life, one of the best years, I would argue, and then it also takes a lot of effort and time. So in industry, the alternative is to start your corporate career earlier or your entrepreneurial career earlier, and then gain a lot of useful real life experience. So this is definitely a trade-off, and I don't think there's a very simple answer because it depends a lot on what kind of field of study and what kind of career in the industry you want to pursue or you are interested in. So, for example, if you have a PhD in a biology, biomedicine, bioinformatics, so any biotech related field, right? At least here in the US, there's like a thriving industry of drug discovery, medical devices, testing new drugs, getting them to market, that employs thousands and thousands of PhDs every year, where a PhD for some jobs is definitely a must. Like if you want to be like a bioinformatician or whatever this is called, like a biostatistician, you probably the vast majority of them already have PhDs. But of course, if you want to become like a writer, I don't think all writers have a PhD in literature or a PhD in English. So very heavily depends on your field of study. I think the best way to see that is just to follow some people, like um, people who are maybe a little bit older than you that you get inspired by. And see like, okay, if you want to become like this, amazing, say startup founder, then, most of them are not PhDs. There's a lot of ways to do that without it. Or if you really want to work at Google, for example, then of course you can with a PhD. It helps. But I think there's several aspects, specifically if you're from Kazakhstan. PhD is also a way to get a visa and settle down in a new country, which is, which can boost your career regardless. So it's, it doesn't come with just a degree and being able to do research. It also comes with sort of like immigration to a different country, for example, which is a huge kind of boost. And another thing is like, okay, so even if you did the trade-off and did spend some time pursuing a degree, it definitely teaches you a lot. It's a very unique experience. So it's not as kind of real life and as deep into the woods of like how different industries work, but it teaches you to solve, as you said, like problems that no one else in the world can solve, and gives you the confidence and gives you the experience of going through that process, which of course helps a lot in certain even industry kind of applications. So it's not even knowing a specific field very well or very deep. It's just that conceptual experience of doing independent research, being able to make decisions and trust your guts that you can answer a question that no one else answered before.
Yeah, right. I totally agree. And now, like reflecting back on my own past, now I kind of think like, well, if I figured this out, I can figure anything out. It certainly gives you a boost of confidence. but also just basic management skills. Like you work on a big project for 5 years and you have a timeline, you have milestones to target. So you develop really good management skills and also communication skills because over this journey, you talk to people, you seek for advice, you collaborate. So it's a really good experience regardless of your career path. I would totally agree. But so now, like when you got your degrees and you worked for a while, what do you think were the most significant challenges that you faced during your PhD? And can you share how you overcame them?
I think it's been 10 years ago. Honestly, I don't even remember a lot of stuff from there because after PhD, my life became even harder. Actually, PhD was the easiest part in my academic life, literally. I'm so exhausted right now that PhD was my like a holiday because you knew what you're doing. Everyone tells you what to do. You don't think, you just follow your professor, hopefully. I think the most challenging part that I remember, it was how mentally exhausting it was. You have to think about your problem for several years, for just one problem, and you keep thinking about it. You like, it's ruminating. It's like you might get into depression easily. You feel isolated for sure. That's and you keep comparing yourself to other PhD students that are like even in your group that are a little bit more successful in terms of publishing papers, in terms of going to the conferences, especially if they're English speaking, they're very outgoing, and you're like a little bit shy Asian person. You're like, and you feel like, oh no, I'm not doing good enough, and it actually hurts your pride, you feel stupid all the years, and I think that was mentally very, very exhausting. So it like, I think all the PG, they go through this depression where they're very, very low, but eventually some of us, they overcome this, some of us not. But what really helped me to overcome is it's a physical activity, that's for sure. Like doing routine physical activity, going to the gym, walking, running, eating healthy. That was the best thing that I learned, that really, really helps you to stay focused. And other thing that is a little bit maybe unpopular, I stopped traveling during my PhD because it's a very cheap dopamine. So you travel somewhere, like you go to California. I was in Iowa. There is nothing in Iowa except for the corn, except some, I don't know, Trump lovers. So, and then you go to California, for example, right? For a weekend, for 3-4 days, and your dopamine is very high. Then you go back to your normal Iowa university and you feel very low and you feel depressed for another 2-3 weeks. And that was not good. So it disturbed my performance. It disturbed my mental health. So it's weird, but I stopped traveling for around 2 years and it was very good for me. So instead of going somewhere very far, I would go for 2-3 hours for hiking or just reading the book in the library. So it helped me to decompress. So I don't have to sacrifice my mental health for that. So I think one of the things was the hardest was mental health issues. So it's to overcome that. And you, especially if you feel lonely, especially if you have only student insurance and you don't really have like opportunity to go to the therapy in the United States, and there's like not a lot of therapy in the universities. So you have to somehow to find a way. So the good thing right now, we have Instagram and all these social networks. You're like more aware. There's a lot of online therapists, so it can help. But definitely mentally, that was the most exhausting part. And at some part, a little bit physically, because I gained a lot of weight during the PhD. I don't know, is it like a normal or not? You gain during the PhD around 15 kilograms because you don't move. You just write or read. So that was also the health part was the most challenging for me. So
Okay. Yeah, yeah, I feel you, Dana. And mental health issues are, I guess, the primary like problem in PhD life. And actually that's the very reason we created KAPNA. So professional development, yes, it's great, but it's all consequential compared to the very core problem of mental health, meaning we felt the need to um, to get the support, and not from like your lab or family. Yes, it's all very helpful, but from people who are going through the same journey, who share the same challenges, same difficulties. So that's why KAPNA exists. And yeah, okay, so uh, being a PhD student in Iowa was like that. How was being a
yes,
PhD student in California?
Yeah, I don't think it helps a lot. Like, yes, it is nice outside all the time. It's a little bit distracting sometimes. But yeah, it's not like you get, I mean, you get used to it in a few weeks and then it's just your like normal, regular life. Um, I think, yeah, I think Don is absolutely right that the mental aspect is the hardest here. Um, there's you essentially, if you work for so many hours, if you're smart enough that you got accepted originally, then of course you will, probably overcome and solve the problems or find other problems to solve. But yeah, just kind of withstanding that, doing that for so long, keeping the motivation is the hardest part. I think it's also interesting from my observation, there's like a certain timeline that people go through. So when you get accepted, you get this sort of euphoria that you're starting a new life. And for me at least, it was also like, oh, we're gonna move to California with my family. So with my wife at the time. So we were super excited about moving, about starting a life in a new country. And I think the whole first year, because it was mostly classes, it felt like just a continuation of your student life. Um, and it's just in a new, exciting place. So I think the first year wasn't mentally tough. The only tough part was the classes, the amount of classes you choose. You can be a little bit overwhelmed if you're in more of a Soviet system at the time. The responsibility is much lower. Here in the US, you have to do every homework. You have to work on everything. You cannot just slack around for half a year and then, prepare for the exams. So, but I would say like it was still a lot of euphoria from just moving to a new place and then getting like settled in a new environment. But then I think the second year, and this is where I saw a lot of people go through, not depression necessarily, but some sort of like uh, identity crisis where it's like now you have to do research. Now classes, you cannot just get A's or B's, whatever, and be happy about it. Like research is your main job. But if you haven't done a lot, or if you haven't done it at the level, like it's mentally tough to kind of switch that gear. And then, and even like I did a few, conferences, research papers. I did a bunch of research before, but here the pressure was definitely much higher. So I think second year where I see a lot of people go through some tough time, but hopefully at the end of that, I mean, doesn't have to be a whole year, but for me it was like I've tried a few problems. I was a little stuck. I I couldn't innovate there because I was like it took some time to even get to the level, get to kind of the state of the art level, and then, but none of the ideas were like really worthy. And I came out of that like basically choosing a new thing to work on, going to a conference, kind of looking at what others are doing, and then finding a different problem from what my professor was suggesting. And actually, that was kind of the breakthrough point where after that, it's just a few years of like okay, I think I can do this now. So I will just keep doing it, and I like it. But then I think also towards the end, there's kind of a valley of death or a valley of despair, they call it, where I think, it can be like your 5th or 6th year where you're like exhausted, you just want to finish, but for your professor, you're like in the most productive state because you have so much experience. You already like essentially on top of your field. You're like one of the smartest people already in the industry, or sorry, in the area of research. And so it doesn't make sense for your professor to let you go immediately. It makes sense to kind of keep you, try to convince you to stay as long as possible. And so here, whereas like also people just get exhausted, and at that time you're like a little bit older, and you definitely get pressure from your peers, where like now you definitely see a lot of them getting families, getting nice life, enjoying their life a little more, not being so overwhelmed all the time.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think definitely agree the mental part, but I think yeah, it's like kind of a roller coaster where starts high, ends low, then a little bit higher, then super low at the end. But then when you finish, I think yeah, you get a lot of accomplishment, and it's something that stays with you forever. Kind of works towards all of your career goals, and I guess we'll talk about that a little later, but yeah, no regrets here.
Mhm. Yeah, I just wanted to point to this, like the difference between probably the first 2 years of PhD and the rest of PhD. As you said, the first 2 years of PhD, at least in the US, it's pretty straightforward. You hit the milestones, you finish your coursework, maybe do some teaching assistantship if your program requires, but the real PhD starts after the second year, when you actually need to do the experiments that you proposed. And then you might discover that they don't actually work, or your hypothesis is not true. So you have all this data, you have all this time that you spent on these experiments, and then you are just stuck. You don't know what to do. And I think that's the point, when you need to kind of keep everything together, troubleshoot, and keep going. And I guess it's very important here to seek for advice from your PhD advisor, from your lab mates, from the outer community. Um, I'm sure there are always people who will be happy to help you. But there is a very relevant question in the chat from Alia. Alia is asking if if there is a, like, if PhD doesn't work out, like what are the ways to solve this issue? Alia is specifically asking about mastering out, what we call in the US. But do you know if there is, like, except mastering out, there are any other ways to solve this problem?
So I can just tell, in Kazakhstan, you cannot do that, okay? You cannot just, if someone is trying to apply in Kazakhstan to PhD, think, oh, I'll do 2 years and maybe I'll do master and then leave. No, in Kazakhstan, if you go to PhD and you don't finish PhD, you have to pay money back to government. Okay, it's a lot of money, don't do that. So if you go, just in general, I don't advise to go to PhD in Kazakhstan, but overall, you also have to pay back if you don't like it. Okay, so, but just this is the case. So it's the same with Bolashak, and there is a lot of programs that you actually have to pay back program. So here you have to think very, very hard if you actually want to pursue. In the US, I had some of my group mates who just, for some different reasons, because professor didn't like them, they couldn't keep up with their work, with the research, or they just left, just took their master degree and left. So nothing is the end of the world, okay? I think that's the main mentality that you have to accept. Not getting a PhD, there is could be because your professor don't want to give you a PhD. There is nothing you can do, okay? There is nothing, you can like cry, pursue your advisor, but if advisor says no, there is nothing you can do. So just accept it, it will be okay. You can apply and get a PhD somewhere else. It's nothing is never at the end of the world, okay? Unless you die, that's it, that's the end of the world. So just, okay, next step, go move on. But anyway, it's, I have so many different examples. One of example, actually my husband, he started his master's degree and then he went to the same research group to do his PhD. And then he left after 3 years and started his
Okay.
PhD again. So, and he started it actually in Switzerland, in ETH, in even better place. So there is never end. You can always apply again and again. Of course, he get his PhD only when he was 38, but it's okay. So it's just never late. Okay, so it's not, don't get discouraged. Like there's so many examples, wonderful examples. So you don't have to like worry that you didn't get this PhD or doctor title. It doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, great advice. Any advice from you, Eldar?
Yeah, so definitely not the doctor title. I think it's been almost 10 years for me. I don't think I used it one time even. I mean, yeah, so nobody really cares about that title. I think again, I have to agree with Dana. Everything she says is correct. You know, there's lots of stories when that happens. So, and I think for me, again, I like to break it down into like what's the reason, right? So, I mean, some of us it's just luck, right? So, like my professor was amazing in terms of the freedom that I had. I was able to start a company. I was able to live in a different city and just come once a week to do the teaching duties and work and just do like, you know, the Zoom style conferences with him before it was popular. And he was like, if I got stuck on something for months and months, it was like no extra mental pressure. It was just motivation. So again, but on the other hand, there were some things that like, you know, of course, I didn't like, but again, it's some of it is just luck. It's like your professor. Unfortunately, there's so much power that your professor has over you in this process. Now, if you feel like you can't do it, try to understand why. So, if why is my professor is too demanding and they're mean to me and they, you know, put me against other students or something like that, then it doesn't mean you have to stop your PhD pathway and you can just choose another professor. So at least in the US, you usually get accepted and to a university and to a program, not to be someone's slave. So I've seen many examples where people switch professors. So if you think that the problem is them, not you, then it's like the first thing you can do is just to shop around and see if someone else wants to fund you and you can do it. And I've seen it's like many examples of that, like people switch labs or people switch professors a lot if they don't like something. So, and again, it's like if you're an immigrant and if you feel like, oh, I need my visa, I need everything, then it's really hard to kind of be powerful enough, like have the power to say, oh, I actually want to do this or that. But it is possible. So not just talk, don't go and talk to your professor immediately about this. It's kind of a one-way door a little bit, but talk to your counselors at the university, kind of explore your options, talk to other students, maybe find someone who did that so that you can understand your options. Now, if the real reason is not your professor necessarily, but you yourself don't see, you know, fun in doing science anymore, or you're too kind of like torn away by other things, or you don't love your everyday day-to-day life, then again, like I don't think the master's degree is something that necessarily is like super, super worthy. Of course, it's a title. Of course, it's like education at some university, but in the US, it's definitely possible. Most places, I think, depending on the program, but most places, if you finish certain coursework, if you pass like a qualifying exam, you will get a master's if you quit. But like I don't think the master's is the most valuable thing. The most valuable thing is you still got experience. You still learned a lot about research and hopefully got a little bit of a network out of it. So, and another option that people don't really talk a lot about, and I've seen it more towards the end, is you can just put your PhD on pause, kind of. So I know several examples. So like one person at Stanford, they started a company and they went to work there and it was successful, very successful, but they didn't finish their PhD. So they just agreed, like with their advisor, they just said, okay, I'll just do an academic leave. You do an academic leave. They did it for like 5 years. And then they come back, they kind of finish, wrap up, and they still get their degree. So if you have like an amazing opportunity either to build your own company or to join a job, another like in my lab, there was a guy who went to work on Wall Street. And the reason was money. Like he had already, I think, 2 kids at the time. And he was like, I cannot sustain this life of a grad student anymore. And he applied for some jobs, easily got a job on Wall Street and left. And my professor, instead of saying, oh, then, goodbye, he's just like, okay, just put you on leave. Maybe you'll come back at some point. And 5 years later, he finally, through his career, he's like, okay, now I have a little bit of time. And because he had some time, he could spend some time again virtually, finish the PhD, just wrap it up. It's not like good enough for further academic research or anything like that, but it was still, he completed it. And then he started a new startup. He's doing amazing. So another friend, he quit. So quit, got a master's and then started working, but he's like happier than ever, right? So like he definitely was the right decision for him. So there's lots of examples of people kind of going non-standard pathway here. And I think this is a concept that is kind of general to life, where it's like there's no one linear path that you need to follow. You will have your own path in life, and you will have your own path in your grad school as well. So just kind of like not worry too much about what others expect and kind of figure out what's best for you is always right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just to summarize here, so it basically depends on the reason. You need just to stop, reflect back, and ask yourself, what is the real reason? And if the reason is external, you can solve it. You can choose a different environment, choose different lab, people. But if the reason is internal, you really need to think what is good for you. And as our speakers pointed out, there are multiple pathways. PhD life and the world doesn't end with PhD. And as a follow-up question to what we just discussed here, I think it's more relevant for Eldar. People are asking, like, if it's possible to start to do a PhD and start your own company during PhD, or basically run a startup. And I think you kind of have a similar experience.
Yeah, and we have a talk. I mean, I can share the slides. Whoever is there interested in that, feel free to add me on LinkedIn and then kind of talk one-on-one on some specific. There's too many questions and too little time. So yes, it's possible. It's again, it's a challenge on top of the challenge. So it's not something I necessarily recommend. But like it is possible. But you start to get torn away because your company hopefully is doing well, and then you will, you would want to spend time there, or your PhD is doing well, you would want to spend time there. So it's like it comes with a lot of challenges, but also it depends on the place. So I have a really good friend at Stanford. who they have a very supportive environment for student entrepreneurs. So they actually encourage you to kind of start building some new companies, going through that experience, and then maybe kind of tie your PhD to that. Whereas Caltech was like there was not a lot of support for that. It was mostly academic focused. So it depends on the environment, depends on many things, and depends on like whether this alternative company is even worth pursuing. Like if you can estimate the chances of that correctly to be successful versus your PhD. So yeah, it depends a lot on the situation, but it is possible. I mean, I went through that, but also extremely tough. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, great thoughts here. And I think we can continue with this topic. There is a interest in how to know that you are ready to pursue a PhD, that you are mentally ready, and that's something that you need. So basically, for people who are unsure whether to pursue a PhD, what factors should they consider in making that decision?
Oh, I was just asked this question during the summer from one of my students, master students. I told her, no, you're not ready. Like, it's not because she is like something academically, it's just mentally she was not ready for sure. One of the ways I understand that if you have resilience, okay, if you can bounce back from the some problems easily, so you do not ruminate or think about this problem or some unlucky experiment for too long. Some students, they're like, oh, my experiment failed, and they keep thinking about it. They keep like, oh, I'm so stupid. How come I failed this experiment? And they kept thinking for months about it. And they like start beating up themselves that I'm stupid. This is not a good mentality to go to PhD. You need to have the ability to bounce back fast. Okay, it didn't work, doesn't matter. It's just a problem. I need to solve it. So if you, this is when you know that you're mentally ready. Sure. So you have resilience and you can bounce back easily from the unlucky experiments. But in general, I think when you're also optimistic, I think this is also one of the good traits to go to PhD. I know a lot of scientists, they're very introverted, they're pessimistic, all this stuff. They come together in a bundle. But in general, if you're a more optimistic person, you believe in, I don't know, in yourself for no reason, just you believe in yourself, then it will be easier for you. Just mentally will be easier. So you can train it for sure. So again, physical training is the best thing. Do very hard physical training. You learn how to be resilient, how to bounce back easily. So this is one of the things that you should learn before you start the PhD program.
Yeah, just substitute your mental pain with physical pain.
Yes. No, it actually works. It's somehow, I don't know, the body is a magic, like human's body is magic. It's all connected, brain, physical training, it's all connected, and it does help. So I'm just like here for the physical training.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any tips from you,
I,
Eldar?
yeah, and I mean, definitely agree. I think even when I was like um, second year undergrad, I remember my friend who is again doing amazing now. He'd also did a PhD. He was like, like sometimes you work on a problem and you're stuck for like hours and hours and hours, and you feel like you're running out of time. There's other homeworks to do, and he's like, for me, the best thing to do is not to say, oh, like I need to sleep later or something like that. He's like, go play some soccer. And then you play soccer and you feel like it's a waste of time because you're not doing work for 2 hours. But then like it helps tremendously, the blood flow to your brain helps tremendously kind of to overcome that later to be much more productive. So I definitely again completely agree on the physical training, all that stuff. But I think if you're kind of thinking, ruminating about whether you're ready or not ready. I don't think it's like, so the first statistic is like most people who get in finish. So the vast majority of people who start a PhD program, they end up finishing a PhD program. Definitely over half, I think probably around 80, 90% maybe. So most of the so it's not really your decision. Like if you get in, then some committee, some people somewhere already decided that you can do this. It's just then the matter of doing it. So again, like if you're thinking, oh, do I have the natural ability, the natural talent? Like, I mean, I think for most people, they usually tend to underestimate rather than overestimate themselves. But in general, I think like it's again the universe will decide for you, right? So if you apply for a bunch of programs, you don't get in, then I guess you weren't ready, right? So like that's kind of like don't you don't have to create an additional barrier for yourself to decide. Like there's already enough people that will decide for you whether you're ready or not. So I think it's like if you love it, if you feel like it's exciting, if you the idea of doing research is exciting, and again, it has to be that, not oh, I will move to this wonderful city, or you know, I will live just like this person who seems to have a great life based on my Instagram stories. So like if you're really excited about like doing some research, doing science, you know, being a biologist or being a chemist or being, you know, a civil engineer, whatever that pathway is, then I think that has to be there. Then you're like, you can overcome the difficulties and do that. But yeah, don't spend too much time thinking whether you're ready or not. Just do it.
Mhm. Okay. Well, yeah. Great advice here. I hope you guys are taking notes. And I think we can wrap up with this like general question. Um, do you see the relevance of PhD evolving in the coming years, especially in your fields? And also, kind of touching upon that, do you think that PhD anywhere or PhD, let's say from the top school, matters? Like, does the difference matter?
I don't know. I can just like shortly. I just read the article in Nature talking about the AI. Who is more innovative, AI or a scientist? So, and it just like the AI actually is way more innovative than the average scientist. So, and most of the scientists in the world are average. We are not very innovative. There are like a lot of bullshit papers, bullshit research, especially in Kazakhstan, like 99% of the scientists probably will be easily replaced by AI. So I'm not even sure about the relevance. I don't know. We don't know how the world will gonna look like in the 5 years in academia, especially with AI. Maybe a lot of our scientists will be just technicians that do the experimental work for AI. So definitely one of the things that might help is become very, very, very innovative in your research field. That will help for sure to stay on float and do not get consumed by AI innovations. So yeah, I think that's a general comment I think I have. And also have a comment, I think I never mentioned about that. One of the challenges, I think it's more about the woman specific, because like it's not talked about a lot, but women usually plan their life a little bit different than men. We have like, you know, we need to have a kids before 40 if we want to have kids, right? So there is like a limitation, unfortunately, natural. So you have to think about that too. So I had don't have kids during the PhD for sure. It's even worse than startup. You will not be turned up, you'll be completely destroyed. Because I was pregnant on my 4th year. It was the worst decision in my life. And in the US, unfortunately, it's a capitalist country. They don't care about you're pregnant, your mother. They just, do you do your work? No, bye. So they might actually fire you if you got pregnant. It's very easily done. Yeah. So this is like, don't get pregnant. There is no perfect time in academia to have kids, but definitely PhD will be the worst time to have it. So this is, I think, just like in general for the girls. So not to add more challenge to your PhD, maybe wait a couple of years and have kids afterwards. Just
Yeah.
this is in general. No.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dana. And I think our second conference will have the entire session on women in research. And to highlight here, not the second session, but the second conference that we will have in November.
Yes, and please do not fall for this. I think there is a lot of, I saw a lot of Instagram pages from even Kazakh scientists doing PhD and being a mother, and they're like enjoying it, and it's very easy. It's not. Trust me, after couple of years, you're gonna see the videos of them that they are crying. They're telling, "Oh, it was very hard. Don't do that." And it's true. Don't do that. You will regret.
Yeah.
You will regret a lot having a kid during a PhD.
Yeah, but I see there are some changes now in academia, and I hope as a young scientist that it will become more supportive.
No,
I try to be
no.
optimistic about that.
No, it's not. It's not. Academia is cut through. Publish, perish, publish, perish. There is no women rights, honestly, in academia. There is no, okay, you have a baby, let's wait for you. No, there is nothing like this. Just, you're gone, unfortunately. So, but it's okay. So this is my the last comment. It's not very relevant. But yeah, I also wanted to, there's like one quick question about the publications, how to be success. What is a success in academia with publication? If you don't have any publication or have only one publication during PhD, don't go to academia, okay? You will not succeed, unfortunately. There is a good correlation between how many papers you publish during PhD and how successful you're going to be in academia. So the less paper you produce during PhD, the less opportunities you're going to have in academia. So this is the last I wanted to mention. Okay, thank you so much, Adia. How's the time?
Thanks, Dana. And that I wanted to hear your thoughts on the prestige of PhD from top universities from like regular university. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely not a huge difference between, say, you take top 30 schools in the world. I don't think there's like a lot of difference. Yes, I mean the better schools have better professors, better conditions sometimes, but like all top schools, all top 50, I think are like really, really good. If you really want to do something, you have the opportunity to do this. So I don't want to like, I don't think elitism here is helpful. And but I think it matters outside. Like if you go somewhere else outside of academia and you tell someone you know went to a top university, of course they treat you a little bit differently. But so there's that aspect undenying. But I think in general, like if you get into a top 50 school in the world and you really want to do good research, you have the opportunity to do so. Like just don't get discouraged or don't think, oh, I should like not go into this school and then go into better school. I really don't see that, but based at least on my perspective, I think there's a lot of really cool research happening everywhere, and it's kind of mostly in your hands. And yeah, I think just to add to Dana's point, I did have some friends. So we didn't have kids until after both of us finished PhDs, me and my wife. We just had a kid only recently, but
Congratulations.
thank you, thank you. And I really have to go take care of him. And my last point would be like, I think it's so hard on women, and I cannot reflect on how hard it is for women, but I think one of the main reasons it's hard on women is because I think in our culture, men don't help enough. So like, if you do happen to be in that situation, whether during or after PhD, when you have a kid, then it means like both parents need to step up and do a lot of work. So I'm going to do that work and go. Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Eldar. Bye. Well,
See you guys.
see you. I think it's time to wrap up since our speakers are both parents and they're very busy. Dana and Eldar, we really appreciate your time, really appreciate your insights that you shared with us today. Thanks everyone for joining. The recording will be available after the conference on our website. And please hop on the next session. And I think Anyar shared the link in the chat. And please fill out the feedback form that Anyar also put in the chat. Yeah, have a fantastic time.